way that we can assure that you net $50,000 out of this transaction is boom, boom, boom. So we engaged, we delivered a message, and then we gain agreement. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you agree that if we do this, X, Y, Z, that gives us the best opportunity to net you $50,000 out of this transaction? Okay, so engage, deliver message, gain agreement. That's the rhythmic flow that you'll see again and again. Okay? All right. There's lots of dialogue here, and that's why I said this is actually set up as a 6-hour class. Don't ever be intimidated by dialogue like, there's no way I can memorize all this. We want you to read it, get the basic idea, get the concept, understand what's being communicated, and then just internalize it. Put it in your own words. Okay? So you let your own personality come out. I don't hesitate. Like I said, I don't like the word interview. So will you be speaking with other realtors? Just personalize it in a way that maintains integrity with the purpose but reflects your personality. Okay? So here we go. We're fully into stage 2, and we're going to start off with our differentiation on win-win. So first let me say I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me, and I want you to understand from the very beginning that my goal is not to come in and give you a presentation. There's that word. This is not a listing presentation about what it is I think you want to hear, but rather to have a conversation to see if a win-win working relationship can be created. A lot of real estate agents are willing to sacrifice a win-win relationship in order to simply take a listing. And I want you to know right up front that I don't operate that way. With me, it's win-win or no deal. Okay? Does that conversation make sense to you? Okay. The agenda. Now, in order to create a win-win relationship, which is what I just stated is our goal here, I must first uncover your needs and goals in this transaction. Therefore, I'm going to ask you some very specific questions and take notes. Would that be okay? Okay, got your notepad. Great. Once we've defined your specific needs and goals in this transaction, we'll discuss and agree on the most appropriate price. After that, we'll thoroughly review the roles and expectations necessary for a successful working relationship. So you've just set the agenda, right? We're going to talk about your needs, we're going to determine an appropriate price, and then we're going to agree on mutual roles and expectations. Okay? How does this compare with listing conversations you've had in the past as the buyers or as the seller or the agent? Is it a little different? Yeah, and I have sold lots of homes as a seller. Worked with agents every time. Never sold one myself. Tried one time. Never did. And I've never heard a conversation like this. Okay? It's very different.
For the most part, they just showed up and had a signed document.
Yeah, there's a CMA. Okay, here's where I think we need to price it. Here's the paperwork. That's how it's gone with us.
Yeah.
Okay? So, one last statement. Great. I want you to rest assured that anything said here tonight will remain totally confidential. So please feel free to be as open and honest with me as you can be. Are you ready? Okay? That confidentiality statement is extremely important. And I'll give you a personal example. I have 2 listings right now. Both of them were personal referrals from people I'm sorry, one was a personal referral, the other was a friend from church. And when I went out to meet with them, it was the confidentiality that was most important to the wife. And I would never have guessed that. And when I brought this up, she said, so do you mean you're not going to be telling people that my husband is already working out of town? It would never have occurred to me that that would have been important to a seller. And I said, yes, that's exactly what I mean. That information will remain confidential between us. I will not even share that with buyer's agents who bring potential buyers through the home. That will be confidential. She was concerned about her safety. The fact that she's home alone with her kid and her husband's in Ohio. Okay, so again, when I think of confidentiality, I'm thinking of financial matters. It would have occurred to me, but when I used that word, I mean, that's what sold her. Okay? So it just emphasized to me that it's more critically important than ever. Okay? So we've kind of set the stage. which was the first message we wanted to deliver. Now we go to stage 3 and the second message that we're going to deliver. Uncovering needs and then agreeing on a price. So here's that dialogue. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very desirable and 1 not being desirable at all, what one thing has to happen for the sale of your home to be a 10 for you? In other words, what has to happen for you to consider the sale of your home a success? Okay? That's a unique question. And by the way, I created a little Word doc that's got, we'll get to that one in a minute. This is a different one. This is Your Win. And it's basically this page in a format that you could sit down with and take notes as you're talking to a seller. And I'll be glad to email this to you. Well, I just brought one as a sample. It's basically what you see on the screen, just fancied up a little bit. Okay? So you're asking, so what we said is we're going to uncover your needs, right? I can't guarantee your win if I don't know what you need out of this transaction. So tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being highly desirable, what's the one thing you really need to get out of this transaction? By the way, what would a typical answer be? Their price, okay? Okay, how would they word that? How would they say it? It's realtor dialogue. I'm going to sell your house for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the fewest hassles. Come on. Sign right here. Let me share, in my experience, it will typically come out in terms of a net number. We need $50,000 out of this house. Yeah, they don't know what price is going to yield that, but typically if somebody's selling, they're also buying, and they want, again, very typically 20% down, and they know what that number is. And so they're like, yeah, we need $40,000 to get 20% down on our new. It'll be something like that, okay? But I've had sellers, in fact, my friend, who said, well, we don't want to sell it for less than we paid for it. That's how it came out. And they've only been in the home a year, okay? But that was important. It wasn't so much financial. There was a little bit of ego behind that. Okay, we want to feel that we made a good investment in this home. Okay, so it'll come out in different ways, but often it will be financial. If it's not financial, what will it be? Typically, time. We need to be out in 30 days. We need to be out in 90 days. We need to be in our new home by the time school starts. Okay. Or my spouse is starting his new job in 90 days, and we don't want to divide our family. So we want to be together. So it will be typically a time or money issue. If there's a third issue, it will typically involve realtor expectations, okay, based upon a bad experience they've had in the past. They'll say, well, we don't want our realtor to do this, or we expect our realtor to do this, and that might be, we want you to hold open houses. Our last realtor wouldn't do that. We believe in open houses. Our neighbor sold their house at an open house, and we want open houses, okay? It's typically not first or second, but if there's a third, it'll come out third. Now, before we get there, let's go deeper on this first question. So if they say something to you that's money related as their first answer, all we want you to do is repeat that back. Okay, so we need $50,000 out of the house. Okay, great. So you need $50,000 out of the house. Repeat it word for word and write it down on your form. Okay? Don't ask any clarifying questions. You can ask the second question that I put on my list, which is why is that important to you? Or as he says it is, what's important to you about getting $50,000 out of the house? And that's when they'll say, well, we need 20% down or blah, blah, blah. But what we don't want you to do and I'm going to contradict what I just said. Okay, so please give me a little bit of grace on this one. If they give you a financial answer, we want you to repeat it back to them and write it down just as they said it, because that demonstrates you were listening, okay? You value what they said, but we do not want you to ask any clarifying questions, okay, about why do you need $50,000, okay? And the reason for that is we don't want them becoming wedded to a financial outcome just yet. Okay, now we need to know if that's in their mind. We need to know it, but if you go deeper on that, they're going to get locked on it. The more they talk about it, the more they say it, the more they identify motives and needs around that, they're going to become married to it, and it will be harder for you to move them off of it. If they say something other than financial, let's just say, that, well, we want a quick sale, okay? Then you ask, what's important to you about getting a quick sale, okay? Because you need to know that, right? What's the motive behind that? And what else do you need to know if that's their answer? The definition of what word? Quick. Right. What does quick mean to you? Okay. So what if they say, well, 60 days. We want a sale in 60 days. Okay. Are we talking about 60 days to an offer, an accepted offer, or 60 days to a closing and out of the home? Okay. Because what other issue does that time impact? Their time frame, their time need, does that factor into any other critical decision you're going to be making here at the table? Price. Absolutely. If they have to be out of the house in 60 days, when do you need an accepted contract on that home? Within 2 weeks. It's 45 days typically to close. I mean, sometimes they can do it in 30, but you better plan for 45. So basically, it's going to be a fire sale if they've got to get an accepted contract in 2 weeks and close and be out in 60 days. So that's why you have to clarify that. So after you do that, you get their first answer. If it's other than financial, you go deeper. Secondly, what's one more thing we could add to make it a 10 plus for you? So they just said we need 50,000 out of the house. Well, what's one more thing? Well, we need to be out in 60 days. Okay, and you clarify that. What does that mean? Offer, out, etc. And then finally, one more. Well, if we could add just one more thing to make it a 10 plus plus, what would that be? Okay? I mean, we're going deep on this, right? We're not just picking a price to sell the house. We're making sure we understand their needs. And anything could come out here. And it might be some, again, probably a realtor expectation. Well, we don't want anybody coming through our home without you present. Okay? We trust you. But even these other realtors out there, we don't know. So that would be important to us that you always be here if somebody's going through our home. Okay? So it could be something like that. We want to sell this house to somebody who's going to love it as much as we do. That's important to us. Okay? So you want to go deep 3 times on it. Okay, real world example, and I just kind of walked you through that. So we're not going to spend more time on page 22. Look at page 23 with me. Okay. At some point during this process, as you're going, deep, 10 plus, 10 plus plus, you may get a little pushback from a seller who just wants to get the price and the contract. Okay. They may something like, is this really necessary? And you're going to explain, necessary, I believe it's vital. It's critically important. As I explained earlier, I'm here in an attempt to create a win-win working relationship. Thus, it's very important for me to completely understand your win in this transaction. And that's why I labeled this sheet, your win.
So if the seller wants to just go ahead and sign the listing agreement,
Yeah.
you want us to tell them, wait a minute?
Yeah, well, they're not saying they want to sign the listing agreement. Well, basically, this will be a mentality of, let's just cut to the chase. And the chase means, what's the price? And you might be thinking the sale price, They might be thinking your commission. Okay? So just give me the numbers. And I'm going to say, no, don't do that. Push back on that because you have not yet established value. And so you might say, okay, well, let's get to the price. All right, we're going to $245. Great. Okay, now, will you do it for 2%? And because you haven't demonstrated value, you're in a very vulnerable position. So push back on it and say, I'm not just here, to take a listing. I realize a lot of realtors will do that. And you've probably sold homes before with realtors who just came in, established a price, and wrote the contract. But it's extremely important to me that I understand your needs at a deep level. And that's why I want to take just a few minutes and make sure that I have a clear understanding of what you need out of this transaction. Okay? That's basically what that's about, that dialogue right there. Okay? All right, look at the next page with me. Prioritizing seller needs. After you go through this and you've identified at least 2 and maybe even 3 needs, the 10, the 10 plus, and the 10 plus plus, we're going to ask you to circle back and ask this question. Of these 3 needs, which is most important to you? Now, why would you need to ask that question when the first question you asked them was, what's the most thing and the most important thing? Why would you circle back now and ask them again what's most important? Well, perspectives have a tendency to change over time. And sometimes that time frame can be as short as 5 minutes. Okay? Think about this. It's typically a husband and a wife. They're talking about their needs. Are husbands' and wives' needs sometimes different? Are their perspectives sometimes different? Okay? You've just probably got them engaging around this issue at a deeper level than they've even done with each other privately. Okay? So stuff has been uncovered and stuff has come out. Maybe they learned things about each other that they didn't know were so critically. Maybe the husband didn't know that it was so important to the wife that the family not be divided in this. Okay? And maybe he was just thinking, no, I'm going to get the most amount of money. And she was thinking, no, it's the time that's more important. So after you've gotten everything on the table, circle back and say, okay, so of these 3 things that we've talked about, which one now is most important to you as a family, or however you want to phrase that? Okay, what's the second most important? And then that would leave blank as the third. Okay? And here's your transitional phrase. So what you've told me is that being, and you're going to repeat the first one, what they said, it being out of your home, completely out of your home in 60 days is your number 1 priority. Is that right? Yep, that's it. That's it. Okay? All right, and so then, look at the bottom of the page. You're always going to address the number 1 priority first. The number 1 priority, 98% of the time, will revolve around time or money. Okay? And that's good for you because the answer is the same for both. Okay? So transitioning to the CMA. And again, the CMA that we're going to coach you down in this class is not the full-blown Fusion CMA or the Tempo CMA. It's just a comparison of the solds, actives, and expireds. Okay? We're not adjusting for bedrooms and baths and all that. So here's the dialogue. So what you've told me is that being completely out of your home in 60 days is your number 1 priority. Let me assure you that my goal is to have you out in 60 days. So you're just repeating that you have heard them loud and clear, and you're basically reinforcing the message that their needs are most important to you. And really, getting you out in 60 days revolves around 2 basic components, price and exposure. What if their primary issue was not time but money? How would the dialogue change? What if it's we need 50 grand? The dialogue doesn't change. It's the same thing. So what you've told me is that getting 50 grand out of your home is your number 1 priority. Let me assure you that my goal is getting you 50 grand out of your property. And really, getting you 50 grand out of your property revolves around 2 basic components, price and exposure. What's another word for exposure, by the way, that we might be more familiar with? What does that mean, exposure? Marketing. That's it. That's marketing. Since exposure does us little good if the home is priced incorrectly, we should first focus on developing a pricing strategy that will lead us to the most appropriate price entry point. Okay? So regardless of what, but if they had a, if their issue, 1 in 100 was not price or was not time or money, then go to that third one and address that. But typically this is where your dialogue is going to go, just like this. Okay? So then you just keep rolling. Let me ask you, do you think a pricing strategy is important? Okay. Well, how would a seller respond to that question? How would you respond as a seller if an agent asked you? So tell me, Maria, do you think a pricing strategy is important in the sale of your home? Yeah, well, share with me why you feel that way. Yeah, I mean, if it's overpriced, it's not going to sell at all, right? And if it's underpriced, we're leaving some of your money on the table. I think we already said that's unacceptable, right? Yeah, so I agree with you, by the way. You're right. A pricing strategy is critically important, okay? That's what you say when their answer is correct or close to correct. And if they say something weird off the cuff like, no, I don't think it's important, I paid $350 for this house. I want $350 out, doggone it, okay? Then you just push back a little bit. Well, may I consult you a little bit about pricing? Those are your transitional phrases, and then either way, yes or no, with either response, you drop right into the justification dialogue. What we must remember is that the pricing game is all about justification. Justification is a key word here, and we'll make sure we have a clear understanding of that. Therefore, we must put ourselves in a position to defend our list price. This is what the strategy is all about, is defending our list price. For the moment we're unable to defend our list price, we lose leverage. And when we lose leverage, we start leaving your money on the table. Now, to me, leaving your money on the table is simply unacceptable. Wouldn't you agree? Okay? What did we just say? What does this statement mean, this whole thing? Coming up with a list price that we can defend. Okay? The pricing strategy is about justification. Ultimately, what we're trying to get here to is a market value price for the home. That when our price entry point, let's just say it's $220, that we need to be able to defend that with a CMA, with our solds, expireds, and actives, to say, so that when the offer comes in at $205, we don't have to say, okay, well, let's meet them in the middle and go to $217, okay, or let's go to $212. No, I mean, that's leaving money on the table. This home is worth $220. That's why we priced it at $220, and doggone it, we're going to defend that. Somebody comes in and offers us less than $220, I, as your professional real estate consultant, am going to go back to that potential buyer's realtor representative and defend our price, justify our price.
I've heard when you do a CMA like that, whatever the price is or the value that they come up with, if the agent wants to list it 1 to 3%
Yes,
higher than that,
room to negotiate. Yes.
you tell your customer that. That even though
If
the
you're
CMA came out at 220, should you list it 1 to 3% higher?
I would say no. That is a typical strategy, but we are not typical. We want it because what happens is you bump it up 1 to 3%, and by the way, the buyer knows that, right? Because their buyer's agent's done a CMA on the property in preparing them to present an offer, and they're going to say, "Oh, the seller's built some fluff into that." Okay, so it's yeah, it looks like it's worth 220. They've priced it at 228. So let's come in at 205, and what's going to happen, and statistically this can be proven, is the seller's going to get less than 220 because they started a momentum. They started the ball rolling downhill. That was part of their strategy, was to overprice and then come down. And that momentum, it's Newton's law of gravity, it's just hard to turn that back. Once you start, you're going downhill. And so the specific pricing strategy we're coaching is price it right to begin with. Don't come in at 228 when it's worth 220. Price it at 220 and then defend it.
So
Mm-hmm.
discover that it is priced right.
Right.
And still, so many buyers try to get it for less than,
Yeah.
so.
Sure, we can do that. But let me tell you, this is priced at market value. We may lose it. We may lose it because this home is priced right. There's no fluff in it. The home. Someone else may get it first. So if you're,
What you say as a buyer to your, I mean.
as an agent to your buyer, that's right. That's right.
So I just lost the offer that I made because it's like I felt like it was priced right where it should be, and I told them.
Yep.
And we did lose it.
Yeah. But you did your job as a consultant, because it's not your job to make decisions for them. It's your job to clarify choices for them. And the choice you clarify is we can go in and offer full price because it's market value, it's priced right, and if we can do it right now, we're probably going to get it. If we lowball it, there's a good chance somebody will snag it away from us while we're trying to negotiate. But it's your choice. I'm here to serve you. I'm going to do what you want, as long as you understand the potential consequences of your decisions. Okay? Yeah.
I'm having that. I'm showing a house tomorrow who's already lowered $10,000 in price.
Yeah, okay, so they've got momentum against them right now. What message does that send to a buyer? Oh, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're desperate. They're under pressure. They've already taken $10,000 off and nobody asked them to. I'm going to ask for $30,000 off. How low can we go? Let's test them out. Let's see how desperate they are. Yeah, that's what I mean. What starts in motion tends to stay in motion. And that's why our strategy is going to be price it right and defend it. Okay? So that we don't start that. And this is in the advanced listing. Well, how else will she know what to offer? As her consultant, you need to say, based upon my analysis in this market, this home is worth X. They're asking X. I would counsel you, if you like the home, it's worth the asking price. Let's make a full price offer and make sure no one else gets it.
Because I was thinking in my mind, it's already gone down 10,000, so to me it's
Yeah.
not good enough.
But if you do your analysis, what you're probably going to see is that they overpriced it. To give them that negotiating room. Nobody made them an offer, and so they just started pulling it out on their own, voluntarily giving it away because they knew it was fluff to begin with. Well, they sell, but they sell for less typically than market value.
They sell for a lot less,
Yeah.
especially if you're talking about a listing that's going down for like
Yes.
a year.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so y'all get that. That's awesome. Okay, so by the way, this page, we're on page 26. You'll see right at the end of the title it says FSBO and expired. The page before was just for a regular seller, but if you're working with FSBO expired, you tweak the language a little bit. How did you arrive at your last price? How many showings did you have? What was the feedback from those showings? So here's the dialogue around that. Just a little bit, it's the same purpose, but you have to ask the questions a little bit differently, okay? So now to the pricing discussion. So we've identified their needs, right? Their top 3 needs. We've prioritized them. So we know what they're wanting to get out of this, and our commitment is to do everything possible to satisfy their number 1 need. That's why we prioritized. Because sometimes you can't have it all. Okay? We can get you out in 60 days or we can get you the 50 grand. We can't do both, right? So, and we can't even guarantee the 50 grand, right, until we do the pricing discussion. So here's what that looks like. And this is very simple. Any one of you could go out tonight and have this discussion. Okay? You see, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's 3 basic sheets in real estate: the sold sheet, the dream sheet, and the expired sheet. And you're going to pull all these off in advance based upon comps in their market area. Same square footage, same bedroom, same baths, lot size, pool, no pool. You're going to have pulled these in advance. The sold sheet represents what we can expect to get in this area at this time. 100% of the people on this sheet have already achieved what you're trying to achieve. They have sold their home. Okay? Key word there is expect. We can expect to do this because the people who have gone this direction have sold. They've done it. The dream sheet is our competition. These are the actives, right? And it tells us what people are hoping to get in this area at this time. And Maria, you could throw in your language here. It's been my experience that most realtors consult their sellers to overprice their home to build in negotiating room. Frankly, they're dreaming. Nobody's going to pay that, and that's why it's called the dream sheet. What most people don't realize is that only about 50% of the dreamers actually make it to the sold sheet the first time around. That is not an accurate number in this market. So you'll need to adjust that for a more accurate, I don't know if it's 80% or whatever, but you just pull that out of HAR. Okay? The other 50%, or whatever the percentage is, go to the dreaded expired sheet. A little drama there, I realize that. This is the sheet of rejected properties and tells us what people are not willing to pay in this market. Okay?
It's just price on the expired. There's other reasons it didn't sell.
It's always price. But, well, okay, it's price and exposure, but it was on the MLS, right?
Yeah.
Because it expired off the MLS, which means it was on the MLS, which means that 25,000 realtors in Houston were aware of that property and had the opportunity to sell it, and they determined it was improperly priced.
I'm just saying because there's a house in my neighborhood that's been there for a year.
Right.
Because of the cracked foundation.
That's a price issue.
Yeah, because if they priced it enough, somebody would say, I can pay the difference.
That's right.
Repair it.
I'll fix the foundation.
I really believe it's always right.
Yep. Maria, think of it this way. You can sell any property in Houston in the next 10 minutes. Any property, if it's priced right.
No matter what's wrong.
No matter what.
That house that I had the open house on, that's the open house. No, this is another one I did for something. I probably had at least 13 different groups come to see the house. Everyone was kind of, like, I'm gonna say 10 out of the 13 were truly interested, but it was the price. They were like, there's work to be done to it.
Yeah.
You know, I watched about 4 people almost kill themselves on the stairs
Yeah.
coming into the home. You know, one lady told me her mother's gonna be there with her, but it's a matter of if it was priced where, like, they would have, actually, if it was priced under, they might even have a situation where they can get people to go. Like,
Multiple bids.
Yeah, multiple bids on it, and get it up close enough to where.
Yes.
they can sell it.
If you price it right, really the least your seller can expect is your list price. And it's possible that you will get into a bid situation. In fact, in advanced listing conversion, actually it's going to show up in a few minutes when we get to expectations, so I'll save that conversation. Okay? Key question. Do we want to position ourselves in a way where we are expecting to sell your home or hoping to sell your home? Of course, the answer you're looking for is expecting. Yeah, we want to expect to sell this home. Then based on the needs we've covered tonight, which sheet do you believe we should primarily study to determine our price? Not the rejected expired sheet, not the active dream sheet, which we know is unrealistic. It's the sold sheet. You want them to say that. And once they do, they just took ownership. Okay? So let's study the solds.
They have enough on it.
Yes, they did. That's what we're hoping for. Okay? Exactly. Let's look at the most important research, that being what is actually sold in your area. And I mentioned a few moments ago the 6 key buying features. They're right here. Number of bedrooms, number of stories, square footage, year built, pool, and lot location. Okay? Those are key features. So if you're looking for comparables, that's what you're looking for. Okay? All right. Agreeing on a list price. Looking at the sold information available, can you understand how a reasonable buyer would price your home somewhere between $188 and $192? Okay? You're going to have that number already identified based upon your study of the sold sheets and the comparison of those homes, their features and amenities and condition, with your subject home. Okay? You will not have done necessarily a CMA, but you will have done a mental evaluation as you're walking through the home. Okay, this is how this would compare to the others. Okay, if they say no, No, 188 to 192? That's not reasonable. Okay, well then please share with me why you feel that way. Okay, because you've just looked at the data, and the data says 188 to 192. If they don't accept that, then you need to draw it out of them. Tell me why you feel that way. Well, because we need $50,000, and we owe 170. There's no way we're going to get it out if we price it at 188 to 192. I understand. And if I could wave a magic wand and sell this thing for 230, that's exactly what I would do. Okay? But the data is showing us that successful sellers in your area are 188 to 192. So if we're going to satisfy your need to be out in 60 days, we're going to have to price it right. And what we've also determined is if they have a critical need to get 50,000 out, the market is not going to provide that. Okay, it's not me not providing it. The market is not going to pay you what you need to net 50 out of this. Okay? So, let's refocus then. If we can't get 50, what's the most we could get? And the data tells us somewhere between 188 and 192. That's reality. Okay? All right. If they are more reasonable and they say, yeah, that makes sense, 188, 192. So based on your needs, where do you feel we should price the home? So if they come in with an answer between 188 and 192, great, I agree. That's perfect. Let's make sure this price will now satisfy your needs. That's when you look, if they had expressed a financial need, will it yield that? And if not, you have the conversation that Maria and I just had. Okay? You'd love to give it to them if you can make that happen, but the market is the one that determines value.